Hey everyone and welcome. Today we're jumping into a pretty complex piece of writing called The Final Trajectory. It basically lays out a very specific way of looking at biblical prophecy and, more importantly, where we might fit into that picture. So yeah, let's just dive right in.
Right from the get-go, the source material hits us with a really powerful question. If this whole prophetic story is true, where are we in it? Are we just at the beginning? Are we somewhere in the middle? Or are we actually getting close to the end?
And the answer it gives is, well, it's pretty striking. According to this text, we're not watching the opening act of some big prophetic play. Nope. It argues that we're already deep into the final chapters, living in a time when the stage is pretty much already set for the finale. And this is where it gets really interesting, because this timeline completely reframes how you look at history. From this perspective, some of the biggest prophetic events aren't things we're waiting for. They've already happened. Just look at this slide. The rise of what it calls the Little Horn Power, a 1,260-year prophecy, that deadly wound in 1798, all of those are listed as history. Done. Even the rise of America is seen as a historical event that's just continuing to unfold. So according to this, that only leaves two major things left on the horizon, a final crisis and then the second coming.
Okay, so to make any sense of that timeline, the source gives us a quick rundown of the key players and events that it says have brought us to this point. So let's take a quick look at how it breaks all that down.
The whole interpretive framework really starts way back in the book of Daniel, with that famous prophecy about 4 world empires rising and falling one after another. The source identifies these, just as historians do, as Babylon, then Persia, then Greece, and finally Rome. And it's Rome that really sets the stage for everything that comes after.
All right, this really gets to the absolute heart of the source's interpretation. It makes some really specific, really bold claims. The first beast from the book of Revelation, which it connects to the little horn from Daniel, is identified as the papacy. Then, the second beast is identified as the United States. That deadly wound we saw in the timeline, it's linked to a very specific date, 1798, and its healing is seen as the gradual return of influence in the modern era. So once all that historical groundwork is laid, the source makes a big pivot. It argues that the final conflict, the one we're heading towards, isn't really about armies or politics in the way we usually think of them. It's about something more fundamental, a choice of allegiance, a choice represented by two powerful opposing symbols.
So what is this mark of the beast then, according to this text? It says it's not a literal mark, not a chip or a tattoo or anything like that. It's something much deeper. It's about a conflict over authority. The big question becomes, who gets to decide how God should be worshipped? Is it a human system, a human institution, or is it God himself, as revealed in the Bible? And this slide just lays it out, plain and simple. You've got two opposing sides. On the one hand, the mark of the beast represents loyalty to a system of worship that's led by humans. On the other hand, you have the seal of God, which signifies direct allegiance to God, shown by observing the Sabbath and, importantly, having a transformed character. It's presented as this ultimate, final choice of loyalty.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. All of this sounds pretty intense, right? And the source totally acknowledges that. But this is where it makes a really deliberate shift in tone. It argues that the whole point of this prophetic story isn't to scare you, it's to prepare you.
The source makes a super important distinction here. Fear paralyzes you. It just overwhelms you. But preparation, that empowers you. It gives you focus. The text is basically saying the point of all this isn't to make us afraid, but to get us ready.
And as kind of the antidote to all that potential fear, the source points directly to this promise from the Bible. The message here is all about God's presence and his help. It frames God not just as the one giving the warning, but as the one who strengthens and holds up anyone who trusts in him.
So where does all this lead? After laying out this whole prophetic map, the source doesn't just end with a prediction. It switches gears and moves to a very personal, very direct invitation to actually do something.
And the response it recommends is broken down into 3 clear, really practical steps. First, it says read the Bible for yourself, especially books like John, Daniel, and Revelation. Second, pray, and not some formal ritual, but just a simple, honest conversation with God. And third, find a community. Connect with other believers who are also taking this stuff seriously.
And to kind of back up that call to action, the source presents another promise. This one is from Jesus himself, a declaration that he's always with you, supporting you, not just for a little while, but all the way to the very end of the story.
As it wraps up, the source material finishes with a few simple but really powerful statements.
The first is an invitation. The Lamb is waiting.
It follows that with a promise that everything is in place. The seal is ready.
And it completes that thought with this message of total access. The door is open.
And this is where it all lands. This is the final message, and it really sums up the whole purpose of the text. It's not just a timeline of events, it's an open invitation. It ends with the final words of the book of Revelation, this universal call to come, leaving every single one of us to think about how we'll respond.